All right, everyone, I want to talk about Breath by James Nestor. This is a book that was published in recent weeks or months and has gotten a lot of attention because James Nestor, the author, appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, which you can just find on YouTube right now by searching James Nestor Joe Rogan. He did like 2 hours with Joe Rogan, and they talked a lot about the stuff that you and I have been talking about for months and years, actually, which is facial structure, jaws, breathing, well-being, how the jaws affect breathing, and how breathing affects essentially everything. So this is probably the most mainstream publication to discuss the same subject matter that we discuss here on Jaw Hacks. This book features the likes of Doctors John and Mike Mew. It features Dr. Gelb, who is the owner at the Gelb Center where I'm a patient, where Dr. Nuaz, my orthodontist, is a practicing orthodontist. It features Mariana Evans, who is a world-class MSE provider. So a lot of the names that you and I have been following and studying in our investigation into the jaws and into breathing and its relationship to health, all of them are featured in this book, which is has gone mainstream. I mean, on the back of this book, you have comments from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Christian Science Monitor, Book List. This is a mainstream publication. Of course, Joe Rogan featured James Nestor on a recent episode. So, I think this is a big deal. I think it's a big deal that this subject matter has gone mainstream, and I think we're only seeing the beginning. This is the tip of the iceberg. I mean, this stuff is such a big deal. The jaws, the epidemic of underdevelopment of the jaws, and the relationship between underdevelopment of the jaws and poor breathing and other maladies that plague so many of us today. This is a really big deal, and so many of us suffer from it that it's only a matter of time until everyone is talking about it and it becomes part of the mainstream health paradigm, like other things are. You know, like the subject of sleep apnea has sort of become, except the subject of sleep apnea is not necessarily entwined with jaws and underdevelopment of the jaws, and perhaps correcting that underdevelopment with orthodontics or orthognathic surgeries. And I would include the MSc in that category. So what I want to do is just review the introduction of this book that I just read. It's like a quick 5 pages of intro. So essentially, Nestor lays out this book in the intro, and he says, he says it'll take you about 10,000 breaths to read this book. And then he says, okay, in the first 1,000 breaths you will learn this, by the second 1,000 this, in the third and fourth and fifth, and he essentially breaks down the chapters into thousands of breaths that you will take while reading, which is cool. It's always interesting to think about how many times we actually breathe a day and to reflect on, gosh, if we breathe so many times and so much in our lives, and I think he mentions we breathe 670 million breaths in a lifetime on average, man, is it important to breathe correctly. And that's what this book is about. It's actually a practical guide. It's not just a sort of theoretical inquiry into how to breathe or why is it important to breathe or why do we breathe poorly. It's actually a how-to manual on how to breathe better. And the way he looks at that, he came about this project in like 2010. He started wondering, okay, what kind of research is out there into the proper way of breathing? And what he realized is that most of the stuff out there on breathing goes back thousands or at least hundreds of years into ancient Eastern religion or other spiritual traditions that have incorporated breath practices, because of course breathing practices are integral to for example, the Buddhist practice of samadhi or jhana, which is a critical part of the Eightfold Path. One of the Eightfold Path steps is right concentration. And the key to right concentration is anapanasati, or breath meditation. And so Buddhism, which is a major world religion and is something that I've studied closely in my time as a resident of two prominent Thai forest monasteries here in the United States, breath meditation is critical to these practices, to these religious traditions. And so James Nestor discovered that to really learn about how to breathe, you have to go back hundreds or thousands of years. And then when he researched more contemporary medical literature, he found that there was almost nothing written about that. So I think James Nestor is trying to, in this book, trying to fill a void of why is no one in the modern times talking about the science of breathing and the science of how the way we breathe can affect other aspects of our health and our mind. So it all started with him and his own breathing troubles. In 2010, he attended a breathing class and learned that by doing these breathing practices, essentially all he was doing was deep breath work, where he would focus on his inhale and exhale and breathe deeply for, say, 20 minutes. He emerged from that breath work with sweating profusely and realized that, wow, there really is something going on with breathing practices. They can have an immediate physiological effect that results in profuse sweating. And at that point, he endeavored to find out what the hell just happened to me to cause me to sweat so profusely while doing this breath work. And thus began a 10-year research project that culminated in this book. In 2015, he published another book on deep diving, which is when humans, without any kind of equipment, hold their breath for like 8 to 12 minutes and dive hundreds of feet below the water, deeper than any scientists acknowledged to be possible, holding their breath for many times what is conventionally thought possible for a human being. So James Nestor is definitely interested in breathing, and this book is going to be an exploration into how breathing affects health, why we breathe so poorly these days, what we can do about it, and hopefully by the end of the book we all become better at breathing, which is a critical part of jaw hacking, of adult expansion. Of course, there's the aesthetic benefits, but then there's also, perhaps more critically, the impact that it has on breathing. And I can comment that of all the trouble I've been through with my orthodontics, arriving at the MSE has made a big difference for me, because the MSE has really opened up my nasal and oral airways, and I just breathe so much better. I sleep so much better. My running has improved. My sleeping has improved. My exercise has improved. It's all been worth it, you could say, because of the improvement that I finally found from the MSE that it had on my breathing. So that's it for now. Stay tuned for more updates on Breathe by James Nestor.